All right, welcome to the November 10th, 2020 meeting of the Newport Beach Public Facilities Corporation, a special meeting. Let's see, I guess you would be called Madam Secretary. Roll call, please.
The record will reflect that Director Herdman is absent.
All right, we'll move into public comments. Do we have any public comments on agenda and non-agenda items at this time?
Chair O'Neill, members of the board, my name is Jim Mosier. Your chief business today will be approving a number of documents which, as posted last week, indicated that when they were in their final form, they were going to be signed by your or the corporation's chief financial officer. I notice in the lobby there seems to be a new set of documents that has changed that. Nonetheless, I wanted to observe that when the corporation last met in August, it had what I thought was a highly competent chief financial officer. So when the agenda came out last Thursday, I was surprised to see it listed Assistant City Manager Carol Jacobs as the interim chief financial officer. I was going to comment that I thought the public deserved to know what was going on. I see that there is an explanation in the form of a late submitted document here from the former city finance director and chief financial officer, which I assume will become a part of the documentation for this meeting. What I wanted to remind you of is that among the responsibilities of the board of the corporation is to select the officers, and without faulting Ms. Jacobs' many skills which she has as an administrator, I think she would be the wrong selection to be an interim chief financial officer. I have two reasons for saying that. First, if you review your bylaws, you will see that as assistant city manager, she is automatically the vice president of the corporation, and the duties of the vice president are to serve as president when the president is absent. And the role of president and chief financial officer cannot be mixed with each other. So if the president, city manager were absent for a day and you made this appointment, Ms. Jacobs would be serving both as the president and the financial officer, which is not allowed by your bylaws. Secondly, your bylaws specify that the chief financial officer primary role is a bookkeeping accounting role, and I do not know Ms. Jacobs' exact qualifications, and I could be corrected, but I think you should pick somebody who has those skills, perhaps the city's deputy finance director. In any event, good luck with your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments in the community room? Any calls? All right, we'll bring it back. Mr. Harp, any thoughts on the bylaws discussion?
Well, I think that definitely the documents the way they're set up now is to have the city manager execute, so I don't think there's any issue related to what Mr. Mosher was discussing.
And that's the amended documents that you've just referenced?
That's correct.
All right, we'll move into current business. Before we do so, Mr. Muldoon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Or I should say, is it chairperson?
That's something.
Chairperson, on this item, I have a conflict because after we voted on the item, the design came forward. The design had a component that involves undergrounding and can involve telecommunications, so I always like to be cautious, so I would be recusing myself on this item as it relates to prior employment and telecommunications. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait just a moment then. All right. Do we have a staff report on this item?
Yes, good afternoon, board members, and thank you. Jim Houlihan, our Deputy Director, City Engineer, will be giving a staff report on the station, and then our Finance Deputy Director, Steve Montana, will be discussing the finance with you tonight.
So the fire station in question is fire station number 2. and it is a replacement of the Lido Fire Station, which was constructed almost 70 years ago. And today, that fire station, there are needs that the fire department requires, and it's not meeting those needs. So today, we want to move forward with a new station that will be up to date and meet all the needs that the fire station's looking for today. The groundbreaking is proposed, assuming award and approval of the financing for December 8th, and construction is expected to be completed in the spring of 2022. The location, just an update for everyone. The existing station is at the 32nd Street behind Lido House, and about 0.3 miles south of that is, east would be the new location on 28th Street and Newport Boulevard. This is a rendering from 28th Street looking at the apparatus bay between Newport North and South. The layout that was conceptually approved back in October of last year is shown here and listed as some of the amenities for that facility. And then in addition to the fire station itself, there are improvements on the frontage of the site along Newport Boulevard, and as well as a new signal that works in concert of the signal on the in the the northbound direction, Newport Boulevard at 28th Street, and that helps with the operations of the fire station. There are parking stalls that were required to be relocated, and those are shown on 28th Street in a diagonal fashion. There were 8 there originally. We moved about 4, and we gained about 3. So total of 15 in that location. So those improvements, as you'll see in the estimate, are are now shown. We showed back in October, we had, I think it's the 5th item down, the new traffic signal. We had just the signal, and now we show the improvements for the frontage as well as the relocated parking. So that's that 735. So in this exhibit here, what we're showing is the proposed, back in October of last year, we had an estimate that we proposed. It was approximately $9.5 million. That's the budget that was approved back in June of last year. And as you can see, the design, we already knew the design costs, so that hasn't changed. The incidentals, there were additional costs for some geotechnical, a lot of printing, another contract for the architect for construction services, and then the construction management, utilities, FFE, and testing are all included in that $741,000 as compared to the $500. The alerting system really hasn't changed, a little bit less. We know now the number. But the big number is the contract, construction contract amount. And that originally we had at 7.2 million, and today we're about 6.3. That was the low bid, and they're the responsive bidder. Later this evening, we'll be looking for recommendation for approval of that contract, moving forward with the award. The other change here was the design contingency. Back in October of last year, that 869 was for the total of those items, 10% of that. The new number is just for the construction item, 10%. So that's, you can see about 240,000 less in the contingency in that location. So the total, we went from 9.5 to about 9, which is great news. Hope we all see that. So anyway, that's that item, if there's any questions on that. And then the schedule, again, we're looking for award tonight, groundbreaking in December, and begin construction in January with completion in the spring of 2022. And with that, I'll turn this over to Steve, and he'll go through the finance portion.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Public Facilities Corporation. I am Deputy Finance Director Steve Montano, and I'm here to present the plan of finance for Fire Station 2, Before I begin, I wanted to take a moment to also introduce two key members of the finance team for this debt issuance. We have with us today Mark Young. He's the Managing Director of K&N Public Finance. He is our independent registered municipal finance advisor. We also have with us Brian Forbath. He's the attorney for the law firm Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Rolfe. He is our bond and disclosure counsel. So together today we can answer any questions you may have. As was done with the financing for the construction of the Civic Center, the city will execute a lease, what's called a lease-leaseback agreement with the Public Facilities Corporation to finance all the construction costs for the fire station. This will involve the sale of certificates of participation to generate revenue for the construction costs. The city will budget for and make the lease payments annually, and the property will be secured with all appropriate and required insurance. The COPs will be secured through the leaseback structure, whereby the city will lease to and lease back from the Public Facilities Corporation the Corona Del Mar and Santa Ana Heights fire stations. These properties will be used to secure the certificates of participation. In terms of financing, we're looking at a semi-annual payments that sum to an average of $960,000 annually over 10 years. This will cover the cost of construction, interest payments, and various other costs of issuance, which will be shown in greater detail on a subsequent slide. Our interest cost, as presently estimated, will be just under 1%, but may end up being slightly more or less depending on where the market is when we price the offering. We are scheduled to do this next Tuesday, so we'll have more information then.
So Steve, on this slide, there you go, perfect. On this slide, so when we received the K&N analysis, one of the things if anyone's following at home, PFC 1-12, there's a discussion about it on Exhibit B that came from an evaluation done August of this year where they're showing true interest cost at 0.6%. So this one's showing 0.9. Is it just market fluctuation?
Yes, that is true, and from what I understand, it is now lower than that, but there's word that it may be going up. They are on the rise again, so it's just a daily fluctuation.
Okay.
Yeah. So this method of financing is consistent with all provision of City Council Debt Policy F6. The accelerated nature of a 10-year repayment term and no required reserve fund reduces debt burden and borrowing costs. Because the term of the COP is 10 years, the market standard 10-year call option does not apply here. And notably, a shorter call provision would be less attractive to investors and would, in fact, be costlier. Finally, the leaseback structure with fire stations 5 and 7 allows us to avoid capitalized interest. This allows for debt repayment to begin immediately, which saves the city money. Here's a detailed breakdown of all elements of the cost of issuance. You see that on the table. The slide also defines the roles and responsibilities of the finance team. As part of this process, rating agency S&P recently assigned its AA+ long-term rating to the city. And this is the highest possible rating, which would allow us to secure the lowest possible interest rate to finance the project. We just recently got this rating, I believe, within the past couple days, so we're very pleased with that. This staff report, as you may have noticed, contains various attachments related to the COP financing. So we put this together to sort of summarize all the relevant attachments and their purpose. As far as our remaining schedule for financing, we plan on posting the preliminary official statement tomorrow. And as I mentioned earlier, we will price the bonds next Tuesday, and we expect to close the sale on December 8th. So to conclude my presentation, we recommend that the corporation find this project exempt from CEQA Section 15332, and that the corporation adopt the resolution authorizing the preparation, sale, and delivery of COPs not to exceed $10 million principal amount. This concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Steve, let's walk through this a little bit. So when we were looking through the budget this year, one of the ways that we were able to make sure that not only was it balanced, but we were able to work through a lot of the CIPs and ensure that this project went forward was to contemplate financing this project. The idea being that, yes, we had the financial wherewithal to pay for it all in cash, but to do so would require substantial transfer out. And then we would be needing to make up essentially the amount of money that we would be taking on in financing. We'd be needing to make that up into the facilities financing plan in the going forward. So when we're looking at interest rates below 1% right now on the true interest cost, we're essentially that interest cost is essentially buying the fiscal stability of not needing to do a $10 million project, or I guess a little over $9 million project all at once, but instead spread it over time so that if for some reason we saw our local economy shut down again, and we saw tax revenues decrease substantially in the coming months, if not year, that the interest costs on this, what we're really doing is we're using that interest cost to buy the financial stability over the next, perhaps 3 to 5 years. If that's how I've understood it.
Yes, that's true. Those are all the prudent reasons why we're financing this fire station at this time.
And the reason, and admittedly, debt has been a discussion in the city for a while now, but one of the reasons that we're looking at a no-call provision on a 10 year is because you normally wouldn't have you wouldn't have a call provision before 10 years if it was a longer debt issuance anyway, so just keep the no-call in at 10 years.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the analysis that we've got, the K&N discussion with the substantial amount of information, that all complies with the updated debt policy that the city council
Yes, it does. Yes, it in fact does.
Okay. Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to voice my support for this, and it's because of the city's fiscal discipline for many, many years that we are in a position with a high credit and bond rating that we have, and given the financial challenges that cities face today, we're able to meet, as the mayor just said, we're able to meet our capital funding requirements by putting this into this financial mechanism that allows us to protect the city as well as to build a much-needed fire station without compromising our other capital projects. So as the representative for this district where this new fire station will be for the first time in over 70 years, I'm very pleased with how this financing package was put together, and I commend staff for putting it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Avery.
I'm just interested in how common this financing option is used by other cities of similar bond ratings to us.
Oh, it is a very common financing option among cities, especially in California, when they are otherwise constrained in many other ways. This is a very common method of financing.
Right, and then when was the last time interest rates were this low for this kind of financing?
It's unprecedented, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further questions or comments up here, we'll go out to members of the public and see if we have any when we come back. All right. At this time, I'll open public comment. We'll go to the community room first.
Chairman O'Neill, members of the board, this is Jim Mosier again. I hope somebody could perhaps clarify. We just heard the discussion of whether this is a wise way for the city to finance the fire station or not. There is a very similar item on the agenda when U7 will be acting as the city council tonight, item 14. Isn't it true that your function this afternoon as the corporate board is just to verify and approve the form of these documents which would be issued or used if the city council tonight decides that using this method of financing is a wise way for the city to finance the fire station? And if this is the appropriate time actually to make that comment, which I would think is tonight rather than now, I would say I personally do not think, despite the low interest rates, that this is a wise way for the city to do this, and I think the city should defer the need to borrow until it actually needs to borrow, and it presumably could borrow at low interest rates then as well if it needed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments in the community room? All right, do we have any calls? Okay, we'll bring it back. Any other discussion up here? Mr. Harp, to Mr. Mosier's point about the sequencing, would you mind addressing that? Or at least the effect, perhaps, of a motion if made.
Yeah, so right now, what you're doing is you're basically approving the documents, and then tonight is the final action you'll take to actually move forward.
Okay,
Is that?
that does. Thank you. All right, any other discussion or a motion?
May I make a motion?
Yes,
to-
please.
To approve the resolution? Please.
All right, do we have a second? Second by Mr. Avery. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote.
With council member or Director Muldoon recusing himself and Director Herdman absent, the motion carries 5-0.
All right, at this time, I will adjourn this particular meeting of the Newport Beach Public Facilities Corporation. We'll need a brief moment to change over the system to the next, so at this time, we stand adjourned. Thank you.